Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is really good to have you here with us.
Great to be here.
Today, we are doing something a little different. Usually, we're out here looking at the external world. We're breaking down a specific historical event, or maybe we're looking at a biography of a tycoon, or the latest shifts in the tech market. We usually look outward.
Right. We tend to focus on the what happened.
Exactly. But today, we are pivoting. We're pivoting hard. We are looking in the mirror. We're going to try and deconstruct the invisible strings that pull at your decisions, your beliefs, and frankly, the entire trajectory of your life.
We're talking about the why.
We are talking about the why. Why do you buy that specific brand of coffee when, the generic one is half the price? Why do you vote the way you do? Why do you find yourself nodding along in a meeting with your boss, agreeing with a plan that in your gut is a total disaster?
It's fascinating territory. It's effectively the operating system of human interaction. And to navigate it, we aren't just going to, rely on pop psychology or some blog post from an influencer.
No, we're going deep on this one.
We are going back to the source. We're breaking down a true heavyweight academic text today. The Psychology of Attitude Change and Social Influence by Michael R. Leip and Philip Zimbardo.
And when you say heavyweight, let's clarify that for everyone listening. This isn't a breezy weekend self-help read with a great yellow cover you pick up at the airport.
Not at all. No, this is a foundational text. It's dense, it's rigorous, and it is just packed with data. And Philip Zimbardo, that's a name that rings bells even outside of a psychology department.
For sure. Most people know him from the infamous Stanford prison experiment.
Exactly. That experiment is, well, it's a cultural touchstone. Yeah. But his work, especially with Leip, it goes so much broader than that. These guys are, and I don't use the word lightly, they're titans in the field of social psychology.
So this book isn't just one big idea.
No, it's essentially a synthesis. It's a synthesis of decades of empirical research. It takes the messy, chaotic reality of human behavior, the things we all just write off as personality or intuition, and it subjects them to the scientific method.
It puts them under the microscope.
It does. It integrates those classic experiments we've all heard rumors about with the hard science of how our brains actually process social cues.
That's exactly what drew me to this topic for our deep dive. It bridges that gap between high-level theory, which can often feel a bit, dry or abstract, and the visceral reality of our daily lives.
Absolutely.
So let's set the stakes here. What is our actual mission for this deep dive? If you're listening and you give us this next hour, what are you walking away with?
Well, the goal is to extract the mechanics of persuasion. We want to move beyond just observing behaviors. We don't want to just sit here and say, oh, my uncle changed his political views, or my teenager suddenly hates this band.
Right, that's the what again.
That's the what. We want to understand the machinery under the hood. Why did that happen? How did the gears turn? Because whether we like it or not, we are all players in this persuasion game.
We are. It's completely unavoidable. Whether you're a marketing executive trying to launch a product, a lawyer trying to sway a jury,
a parent trying to get a toddler to eat green beans.
Yes. That might be the toughest one. Or just someone trying to navigate office politics without getting crushed. These mechanics are running in the background 24/7.
Exactly. And here's the reality. If you don't understand the rules of the game, you are almost certainly losing it. You're being moved by forces you don't even recognize.
Okay, so what's the roadmap for today? How are we going to break this down?
So we're going to start at the absolute genesis, how an attitude actually forms in the first place. Then we will dissect the two massive pillars of influence, the drive to be liked versus the drive to be right.
That distinction was a massive light bulb moment for me when I was going through the reading. I think we often lump peer pressure into one big bucket, but it's actually two very different psychological needs.
It is, and they pull levers in totally different parts of our brain. Later on, we are going to unpack the persuasion equation itself: source, message, audience.
The nuts and bolts.
The nuts and bolts. And then, maybe the most mind-bending part of the book, this counterintuitive loop where our behavior actually programs our beliefs rather than the other way around.
That part completely flips the script on how we perceive our own integrity.
Yeah.
It's unsettling.
It is a little unsettling. And finally, we have to talk about defense. How do you build a shield? Because the text makes it very clear. We aren't helpless. Resistance is a skill you can actually train.
Fantastic. So let's get into it. Part one, the anatomy of an attitude.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with definitions because words matter here. In casual conversation, if I say my nephew has an attitude, I usually mean he's being rude or rolling his eyes.
Yeah.
I assume Zimbardo and Lippi are using a more precise definition.
Very much so, yeah. In this scientific context, an attitude isn't about moodiness or sass. The text defines an attitude as an evaluation.
An evaluation.
An evaluation. It's a categorization of a person, an object, or an idea along a dimension of favorability.
Okay, that sounds clinical. But it's basically our brain's way of, tagging things. Like good, bad, dangerous, safe.
Think of it as a mental shortcut or triage system. It's a structured assessment that has both a direction, is it positive or negative, and it has a weight. Is it strong or weak?
So an example.
You see a spider. Your brain doesn't sit there and ponder the taxonomy of arachnids every single time. It doesn't have time for that.
Right.
It immediately runs a calculation based on past data. Dangerous, safe, gross. Fascinating. That output, that quick-fire judgment of negative avoid, that is the attitude.
It's like a filing system. You encounter something new, you slap a label on it, and you put it in the good stuff cabinet or the bad stuff cabinet.
Exactly. It's a filing system that helps us navigate the world efficiently. Imagine if you had to reevaluate every single object you encountered every day from scratch. Is this chair safe to sit on? Is this apple considered food?
You'd be paralyzed. You wouldn't get out the front door.
You would be completely paralyzed. Attitudes allow us to move through the world on a kind of a cognitive autopilot.
So we aren't born with these files preloaded. I assume I wasn't born with a specific attitude about, say, tax policy or sushi or the New York Yankees.
Correct. We are born with very few innate preferences, mostly related to survival, like a preference for sweet tastes or an aversion to loud, sudden noises. Everything else, it's built, it's constructed.
And how?
The text breaks this down into what it calls the formation triad, the three main architects of our attitudes. The first one is the most primal personal experience.
A hot stove effect.
Precisely. Direct interaction. You touch a hot stove, you feel searing pain, and you form an immediate high confidence, very negative attitude toward touching stoves.
Is visceral learning.
Yes, it's based on direct sensory input and direct consequence. It bypasses the intellectual debate and goes straight to the nervous system.
And these are usually the hardest attitudes to shake, right? Because they're not just an idea, they're a memory in your body.
They are. They're rooted in your own survival mechanisms. The book gives a great example. If you get terrible food poisoning from a specific restaurant, let's say you have a bad prawn curry, no amount of advertising, no number of celebrity endorsements, no 50% off coupons are going to get you back into that restaurant.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it makes me queasy.
Your body has kept the score. The attitude is locked in by a powerful negative personal experience.
Okay, so that's direct experience. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I have strong attitudes about things I've never personally experienced.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been to Mars, but I have a pretty positive attitude about space exploration.
Right.
I've never met certain politicians, but I definitely have. Well, let's just say I have strong attitudes about them.
Of course. And that brings us to the second architect in the triad, social learning. This is the monkey see, monkey do aspect of humanity.
We're copycats.
We are incredibly efficient learners because we outsource our risk. We don't have to touch every hot stove ourselves. We can just watch someone else do it, see them scream, and learn the lesson for free. We observe others. We absorb cultural norms.
So this is the classic example of a child who is afraid of dogs. Not because they were ever bitten, but because they saw their mother flinch and freeze up every single time a dog walked by.
That is a perfect example. We model our evaluations on the people around us, our parents, our peers, teachers, media figures. This is how cultural prejudices get passed down. A child isn't born racist, for example.
No.
They observe the subtle cues of their parents, who they trust, who they lock the car doors around, who they speak to with respect, and who they don't. They absorb those attitudes through osmosis.
It's almost like downloading a software update from the people around you. You just inherit their settings.
That's a great analogy. And it applies to everything. Think about brand preferences. Why do you use Tide laundry detergent?
Yeah, because that's what my mom used.
Exactly. Did you run a chemical analysis on all the detergents? Did you read consumer reports?
Of course not.
You just adopted the household norm.
Yeah.
We look around to see what the correct attitude is supposed to be according to our tribe. It saves us the trouble and the risk of testing everything ourselves.
It's efficient, but it also seems like a massive vector for bad ideas. I mean, if the tribe is wrong, I inherit the wrong attitude without ever questioning it.
That is the fundamental danger. If your social circle believes that the earth is flat, you are overwhelmingly likely to adopt that attitude through social learning, regardless of the physical evidence.
Which brings us to the third part of the triad.
Yes, the part that helps lock it all in. Cognitive processes.
So this is what happens inside our own heads. The internal filing clerk.
Right. This is how our brains organize and categorize all this incoming information. Our brains are, at their core, categorization machines. We crave consistency and we absolutely hate chaos.
We like neat little boxes.
We love neat little boxes. So if you have one bad personal experience with one specific lawyer who overcharged you,
Well, here we go.
your cognitive process might generalize that. It takes that one data point and extrapolates it into a broad negative attitude about all lawyers.
It's stereotyping, basically. A cognitive shortcut.
In a way, yes. It's a heuristic. If A is like B and A was bad, then B is probably bad too. Now, is it logically sound? No. But is it biologically efficient? Does it save processing power? Absolutely.
So we have these three shapers.
Yeah.
Direct experience, social observation, and our brain's own tendency to generalize and create patterns.
And here's the key insight from Lippi and Zimbardo regarding this triad. Early attitudes often predict later behaviors. If you establish these evaluations early on, they set a trajectory.
They create a filter.
A powerful one. It creates a filter bubble where you start to actively look for information that confirms those early attitudes.
That's confirmation bias kicking in. You start to see what you expect to see.
Right. But, and this is the hopeful part of the book, they are not set in stone. The authors really emphasize that social context is a powerful, powerful modifier. We are not robots programmed once at birth. We are constantly updating the software based on new social data.
Meaning, I might hate that specific car brand because of a cognitive generalization I made when I was 20. But if all my friends buy one at age 30 and they all love it, that social context can rewrite the code.
It can absolutely rewrite the code. Attitudes are durable, but they are permeable, which transitions us perfectly into the second part of our deep dive, the two pillars of social influence.
Yeah.
Because once those attitudes are formed, they are constantly being battered and tested by the world around us.
And the book draws a really specific, really important line here. It distinguishes between two types of influence that I think most people, myself included, tend to conflate.
Right.
We have normative influence and informational influence.
Yes. And if you take nothing else away from this deep dive today, take this distinction.
Right.
It explains so much about human irrationality. It explains why smart people do incredibly stupid things when they're in groups.
Okay, so let's start with normative influence. Normative sounds like norms.
That's the root. Normative influence is conforming to be liked or accepted by the group. It is the desire for social harmony, for belonging.
The classic peer pressure factor.
It is, but let's give it more weight than just, high school peer pressure. It's evolutionary.
Yeah.
You have to remember, for most of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, being kicked out of the tribe didn't just mean you were lonely.
It meant you were dead.
It meant you were dead, you starved, or you were eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. You could not survive alone. So we have a deep biological, almost primal drive to harmonize with the group.
So under normative influence, you're not changing your mind. You're just changing your behavior to avoid making waves.
Exactly. You might agree with a group consensus, even if your private, personal judgment is screaming at you that it's wrong. You are suppressing your own truth to maintain your membership card to the tribe.
Okay, give me a real-world example of this.
The boardroom scenario is a classic one. You're in a big meeting. The CEO presents a new strategy that is, to you, clearly flawed. The numbers don't add up, it's going to lose money. But then the person next to you says, "Brilliant, boss." And then next person nods and says, "Game changer."
And you're sitting there, your stomach in knots.
You're thinking, this is a disaster. But you look around, you see all the nodding heads, and what do? You nod too. You say, "Totally brilliant."
That's normative influence.
That is a textbook example. You haven't been convinced by the facts. Your mind hasn't changed. Your behavior has. You are prioritizing social safety over objective accuracy. You're complying to avoid the very real social cost of dissenting.
Okay, so that's all about fitting in. How does that compare to informational influence?
Informational influence is, in many ways, the opposite. It's conforming because you want to be factually correct, and this is the kicker. You assume the group has more or better information than you do.
So this isn't about being liked. This is about being right.
Exactly. This is about accuracy. Imagine you're in a foreign airport. You don't speak the language. You can't read the signs. You are sitting at a gate waiting for your flight. Suddenly, everyone in the terminal stands up and starts running toward a different gate.
Okay.
You don't know why. There's no announcement you can understand. But what do?
I get up and run. Immediately. I'm not asking questions.
Right. And you aren't running because you want those strangers to think you're cool. You aren't worried about being popular at gate 27B.
No, I'm worried about missing my plane.
You are running because you assume they know something you don't. The flight changed, there's a fire, security breach. You are using the group as a data source. You are conforming for informational reasons.
That makes perfect sense. In that moment of uncertainty, the group becomes a proxy for reality. Their consensus is the information.
Exactly. And the text highlights that we are constantly toggling between these two pillars. Are we trying to fit in, or are we trying to find the truth? And here's where it gets really tricky. Skilled manipulators, whether they're in marketing, politics, or cults, they often play on both of these simultaneously.
How so?
They'll make you feel like everyone is doing it, which is normative pressure. And at the same time, they'll say experts recommend it, which is informational pressure. They hit you from both sides.
The source material mentions classic experiments here as the backbone for these theories. I know the text references the Asch conformity studies and, of course, Milgram. We should probably unpack those because they really illustrate these two pillars in terrifying action.
We have to. I mean, you can't really grasp the power of normative influence until you understand what Solomon Asch did in his lab in the 1950s. His experiments are the gold standard.
So paint the picture for us. What was the setup?
Okay, imagine you volunteer for a psychology study on visual perception. That's what they tell you it is. You walk into a room, there are 7 other people sitting around a table. You think they're other participants, just like you.
But they're not.
They're not. They're all actors. They're working for the researchers. You are the only real subject in the room.
Already a nightmare scenario. I hate being the only one not in on the joke.
It's designed to be uncomfortable. So the researcher stands at the front and holds up 2 white cards. On one card, there's a single vertical line. On the other card, there are 3 lines of different lengths labeled A, B, and C.
Okay.
Your job is incredibly easy. Just say which of the 3 lines on the second card matches the length of the line on the first card.
So it's a vision test.
A very, very easy one. The answer is obvious. It's not an optical illusion. A child could do it correctly every time. And for the first few rounds, everything is normal. Everyone goes around the table and gives the correct answer. You feel comfortable. You think, okay, this is a boring experiment.
But then the hammer drops.
Yeah. Then the hammer drops. On a critical trial, the first actor in the line confidently gives the wrong answer. Let's say the correct answer is B, and he says A.
Okay, you probably think, weird, that guy needs glasses.
Right. But then the second actor agrees with him, A, then the third, definitely A. By the time it gets to you, and you are usually seated at the end of the row, everyone else in the room has unanimously stated an answer that your own eyes tell you is factually incorrect.
So you are sitting there, trusting the physical reality in front of you. Your senses tell you the answer is B, but this entire social reality you're in is telling you it's A.
Exactly. And Asch described the tension in the room as palpable. Subjects would start to sweat. They'd squint at the cards. They would lean forward. You can almost hear the gears grinding in their head. Am I going crazy? Are they seeing something I'm not? Did I misunderstand the instructions?
The internal conflict must have been immense. And what happened? What were the results?
Asch found that a staggering percentage of people on about 37% of the critical trials, the real subject yielded to the group. They gave the wrong answer just to not be the odd one out.
A third of the time. Wow.
And about 75% of participants conformed at least once. They knew they were wrong, but the psychological pain of standing out, of being the lone dissenter, was worse than the discomfort of denying their own senses.
That is normative influence in its purest, most distilled form.
It is. When Asch interviewed them later, many of the subjects said things like, I knew the answer was wrong, but I didn't want to spoil the results, or I figured they knew something I didn't, and I didn't want to look stupid. They literally denied the evidence of their own senses to maintain group cohesion.
Now, what about Milgram? The shock experiments, that feels darker. The stakes are so much higher than just saying the wrong line length.
It is much darker, and it illustrates a powerful blend of influences, but it leans heavily on a specific type of informational influence. The power of authority.
Okay, set this one up.
Stanley Milgram conducted these studies at Yale in the early 60s. Participants were told they were part of a study on memory and learning. They were always assigned the role of teacher. The other participant, who was an actor, was assigned the role of learner.
And they were separated.
Yes, the learner was in another room, strapped to a chair with electrodes. The teacher sat in front of a big, intimidating shock generator with switches that went from 15 volts all the way up to 450 volts, labeled XXX danger, severe shock.
Odd.
The teacher was told to read pairs of words to the learner. If the learner got an answer wrong, the teacher had to administer an electric shock. And with every wrong answer, the voltage went up by 15 volts.
And just to be clear, the learner wasn't actually getting shocked, right?
No. The learner was an actor, and the machine was a prop. But the teacher didn't know that. As the shocks increased, the actor would start to grunt in pain, then yell. Then he'd start banging on the wall, screaming, pleading to be let out, mentioning a heart condition.
And then eventually,
He would go completely silent, as if he had passed out or worse.
And the participant, the teacher, is hearing all of this unfold.
Yes. And naturally, most participants became extremely agitated. They wanted to stop. They would turn to the researcher in the room with them and say, "He's hurting. I can't do this. I want to stop."
And this is where the influence comes in, the crucial moment.
Right. The researcher, a man in a stern gray lab coat, holding a clipboard, wouldn't yell or threaten them. He would just calmly say one of 4 prods. Please continue, or the experiment requires that you continue.
That's it. No threats.
The strongest one was, you have no other choice, you must go on. But it was all delivered in a calm, authoritative monotone.
And people.
Yeah.
They did. They went on.
Over 60% of participants went all the way to the maximum voltage, 450 volts. They delivered what they believed were life-threatening shocks to a complete stranger just because a guy in a lab coat told them to.
Why? I mean, that's the million-dollar question. Why would they do that?
It wasn't just because they were scared of the researcher. He had no real power over them. It was because they viewed the researcher as a legitimate expert. The lab coat, the clipboard, the setting of Yale University, these are all potent symbols of valid information and authority.
So they deferred their judgment to him.
Exactly. The participant is thinking, my gut is telling me this is wrong. I am distressed. I am causing harm. But this man is a scientist. He works at Yale. He knows what is safe. He knows what is necessary for the experiment. I will defer my moral judgment to his superior information.
They essentially offloaded their moral agency to the authority figure.
That's the perfect way to put it. They offloaded their conscience.
That's terrifying. It really implies that if you just wrap a bad idea in the trappings of authority, if you put a suit on it or a lab coat or you get a fancy title from a prestigious institution, a lot of people will shut off their own moral compass and follow orders.
That is the informational trap of authority. We are desperate for someone who knows the answers, especially in an ambiguous or stressful situation, and we assume authority figures have the correct view of reality.
It shows that our autonomy, our sense of personal responsibility, is a lot more fragile than any of us would like to admit.
It is, but understanding it is the first step to reclaiming it. Which brings us to the active side of this whole equation. We've talked about how we are influenced. Now let's talk about the mechanics of persuasion itself. How do you actually intentionally change someone else's mind?
Okay, part 3, the mechanics of persuasion.
This is where the book shifts from observation to engineering. It lays out the persuasion equation, and the text breaks this down into 3 critical variables that determine if a message is going to stick or if it's just going to slide right off.
Let's run through them. It's a simple framework, but it's so powerful.
If you want to analyze any persuasive attempt, a commercial, a political speech, a negotiation with your spouse, you look at these 3 things: the source, the message, and the audience.
Okay, let's look at the source first. Who is speaking? What makes a source persuasive?
Credibility is the currency here. But the text does a fantastic job of breaking credibility down into 2 distinct components: expertise and trustworthiness.
Expertise and trustworthiness.
You need both to be truly persuasive, and they are not the same thing.
Explain the difference. I feel like they usually go hand in hand.
Not always. Expertise is simply, does this person know their stuff? A doctor has expertise in medicine. A mechanic has expertise in cars. It's about knowledge and credentials.
Got it. And trustworthiness.
Trustworthiness is about motivation. It's the answer to the question, do I believe this person is unbiased? Do they have my best interests at heart, or are they just trying to sell me something?
This is exactly why we are so suspicious of salespeople, even if they clearly know the product inside and out.
Exactly. A used car salesman might be a brilliant mechanic. He might have incredible expertise. He can tell you everything about the engine. But when he tells you, this is the best engine ever made, total cream puff, what do you think?
I think you're getting a commission. You just want my money.
Right. So he has high expertise, but you perceive him as having very low trustworthiness. So the persuasion fails.
So how does a source build trustworthiness?
One of the most powerful ways is to argue against your own self-interest.
Ah, that's a good one.
Imagine a waiter at a restaurant. You're about to order the expensive fish special. The waiter leans in and whispers, actually, I wouldn't order the fish tonight. It's not the freshest. The chicken is much better, and it happens to be cheaper.
I trust that waiter immediately. Like, for life.
Why? What just happened psychologically?
Because he argued against his own interest. He recommended a cheaper dish, which means a smaller bill and probably a smaller tip for him. So I assume he's telling the truth.
Bingo. By sacrificing a few dollars on the bill, he has established massive trustworthiness. Now, if he comes back later and recommends a really expensive bottle of wine,
I'm much more likely to buy it because now he's my trusted advisor, not just a salesperson.
he has hacked the trustworthiness variable. And this explains so much about why influencer marketing works. We feel a parasocial relationship with these creators. We think they're our friends, so we assign them high trustworthiness, even though they are technically just salespeople.
They're renting that trust that we've given them.
Brands are renting the trust. They're buying that friendship equity.
Okay, so that's the source. What about the second variable? The message itself.
This is about the quality and the structure of the argument. And the text dives into some really interesting nuances here. For example, is it better to use logic or emotion? Is it better to use fear? Is it better to present just your side, or should you acknowledge the opposing view?
I've always heard that acknowledging the counterargument actually makes you look stronger.
Generally, yes. For a sophisticated audience, it's called a two-sided argument. If you just present your side and completely ignore the obvious counterarguments, an intelligent audience will think you're either hiding something or you're just biased.
It feels dishonest.
It can. But by bringing up the counterpoint and then systematically refuting it, you boost your credibility. You look objective and confident. You're essentially saying, look, I've considered all the angles. I know what the critics say, and here's precisely why they are wrong.
It's more disarming. You're taking their weapon away before they can even use it.
Exactly. You're inoculating the audience against the other side's future arguments.
And finally, the third variable, which I think is the most overlooked, the audience.
This is the one that people forget all the time.
Yeah.
You cannot persuade everyone with the same message. You have to account for audience factors. And one of the biggest factors the book discusses is a personality trait called the need for cognition.
The need for cognition. That sounds like a desire to do homework.
It kind of is. Some people genuinely love to think. They enjoy puzzles, they like reading data, they like complexity, they have a high need for cognition.
The nerds.
The nerds, yes. To persuade them, you need strong, logical, data-driven arguments. The text calls this the central route to persuasion. You have to win them over with the quality of your facts.
Okay. And the other group.
The other group.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to think that hard. They are what psychologists call cognitive misers. They prefer to save their mental energy. They rely on shortcuts, on heuristics.
So how do you persuade them?
You use the peripheral route. You don't hit them with charts and graphs. You use celebrity endorsements, catchy jingles, attractive visuals, or simple, easy-to-digest slogans, things that feel good and don't require a lot of thought.
So a highly technical argument with data tables might work perfectly on an audience of engineers who have a high need for cognition. But that same message would fail miserably with a general audience who just wants to know if the product is cool and if their favorite celebrity uses it.
Precisely. If you use the central route on a peripheral audience, they just tune out. It's boring. If you use the peripheral route on a central audience, like trying to sell complex financial software to a CFO using just a pop star's endorsement, they will feel insulted.
And this all leads to this core concept of contextual dependence.
Right. The book hammers this home. There is no magic bullet. There's no perfect speech that works on everyone, everywhere. A message that works in one context might completely fail in another if the audience lacks the motivation or ability to process it, or if the source lacks the right kind of credibility in that specific room.
It's a lock and key mechanism.
That's the perfect metaphor. You have to tailor the key, your source, your message, to fit the specific lock of that audience in that moment. You can't just use a sledgehammer.
You can try, but the lock usually breaks.
And no persuasion happens.
Okay, I want to move to part 4 of our deep dive, because this is the section of the outline that I circled 3 times when I was preparing. It's the counterintuitive loop.
This is one of the most powerful and, frankly, most unsettling insights in the entire field of social psychology. It challenges our fundamental understanding of cause and effect in our own minds.
Right. We usually think the chain of events goes like this. I believe something, therefore I act on it. Simple. I believe recycling is good for the planet, so I recycle my plastic bottles. I believe this political candidate is the best choice, so I volunteer for their campaign. Belief creates behavior.
That is the standard rational view of human action. Belief drives behavior. But Lipens and Bardo, drawing on the foundational work of Leon Festinger, argue that it is often the complete reverse. I act, therefore I believe.
Behavior shapes belief. That feels so backwards. How on earth does that work?
It all centers on the powerful theory of cognitive dissonance. As humans, we have a deep, profound psychological need for consistency. We want our actions and our beliefs and our self-image to all align and be in harmony.
We don't like contradictions.
We hate them. When our actions and beliefs are out of sync, we feel a state of discomfort, a psychological tension. Festinger called this dissonance. It's a mental itch that we are highly motivated to scratch.
Okay, give me an example.
So you think of yourself as a healthy, disciplined person. That's your self-concept, your belief. But you just spent the last hour on the couch and ate an entire box of donuts.
A familiar feeling.
So now there's a conflict. I am a healthy person is dissonant with, I just ate 12 donuts. These two cognitions don't fit. And your brain hates that tension. It wants to resolve it. Now, you can't uneat the donuts. The action is done. It's in the past. So what's the easiest thing to change?
By belief.
Your belief. Or you add a new belief to rationalize it. You rewrite the narrative in your head. You start saying, well, I had a really hard week. I deserve a treat. Or it's fine. I'll just go to the gym for 2 hours tomorrow. Or my favorite, I read an article that said cheat days are actually good for your metabolism to keep the body guessing.
I have definitely used that last one. Guilty as charged.
We all have. You rewrite the internal code to match the external reality of your behavior. You change the belief to justify the action.
Okay, so that's how we lie to ourselves about donuts.
Yeah.
How does it apply to persuasion and social influence?
This is where it gets really powerful. If you can get someone to agree to a small action, even if they are reluctant, even if you have to pay them or force them, their brain will often shift their underlying attitude to justify why they did that action.
Can you give me a concrete example of this idea of compliance leads to internalization?
The book discusses a classic experiment by Festinger and Carl Smith. They had students do an excruciatingly boring task for an hour turning pegs on a board, just mind-numbing.
Sounds awful.
Afterwards, the researcher asked the student to do them a favor. They said, the next participant is in the waiting room. Could you go out and tell them that the task was actually really fun and exciting?
So they're asking them to lie.
Yes, but here's the twist. They offered to pay the students for telling this lie. Half the students were offered $1 to do it. The other half were offered $20.
Okay, so a big difference in payment. $1 versus $20.
A huge difference, especially back then. Now, afterwards, the researchers secretly surveyed the students who lied and asked them how much they personally enjoyed the boring peg-turning task. And what do you think they found?
I would assume the people who got paid more, the $20 group, would say they liked it more, they got a bigger reward.
That's the logical assumption. But it was the exact opposite. The students who were paid only $1 to lie reported enjoying the tasks significantly more.
What? Why?
Cognitive dissonance. Think about the student who got $20. They lied. Why did they lie? Well, the justification is easy. I lied because I got paid a lot of money. Anyone would lie for $20. There's no dissonance. The belief, lying is bad, and the action, I lied, are explained by the large reward.
Okay, the money explains it away.
Right, but now think about the $1 student. They also lied. But they can't justify it with the money. $1 is not enough to justify lying to someone, so their brain has a problem. I am a good, honest person, yet I just lied for a pathetic amount of money. That creates a huge amount of dissonance.
So they can't change the action. They can't change the fact they only got $1.
So what's the only thing left to change? Their original attitude about the task. To reduce the dissonance, their brain convinces itself, you know what? The task wasn't actually that boring. It was kind of interesting. I wasn't really lying. They changed their belief to match their behavior.
That is wild. They acted their way into a new attitude. The small reward forced them to internalize the lie.
That is the principle. Compliance leads to internalization when the external justification is weak. This explains a lot, from why hazing rituals in fraternities can create intense loyalty, to why people who are forced to publicly defend an idea often end up truly believing in it.
It's like your brain protects your ego by saying, I wouldn't do all this work for something I don't believe in, therefore I must believe in it.
Precisely. It turns the idea of integrity on its head. Sometimes we act our way into a new set of values just to keep our internal world consistent. Fake it till you make it is actually sound scientific advice for attitude change.
So we've painted a picture of humanity that seems a bit malleable, maybe even a little bleak. We conform to groups, we rationalize our behaviors, we are swayed by guys in white coats, we inherit prejudices from our parents. Are we just helpless sheep?
The text is very, very clear on this. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And that brings us to part 5 of our deep dive, which is the shield.
The resistance.
Yes. The authors emphasize that humans are not passive. We are not just empty vessels waiting to be filled with propaganda. We actively, constantly resist persuasion.
So resistance is an active process. It's a verb. It's something you do.
It is. It's a muscle you can train. And the book details how we build this immunity. It identifies 3 main factors that strengthen our resistance to unwanted influence.
Okay, let's run through them. What's number 1?
Prior knowledge. This is your first and maybe your best line of defense. Knowing the facts about a topic beforehand makes you much, much harder to fool.
It's like armor.
It is literal armor. If a salesperson tells you a car has a revolutionary new engine, but you've already read the technical specs online and you know it's the exact same engine as last year with a new plastic cover,
Their persuasion attempt just bounces right off you. You're immune.
it bounces right off because your prior knowledge allows you to counter-argue in your head as they are speaking. You can fact-check them in real time. If you are a blank slate on a topic, you have no counter-arguments. You have nothing to block the incoming message with, so you're incredibly vulnerable.
Okay, knowledge is power. What's the second factor?
Confidence. Specifically, trusting your own judgment. This acts as a powerful buffer against that normative influence we talked about with the Ashline experiments.
How so?
If you are confident in your own analysis and your own perception of reality, you are far less likely to just go along with the herd to be safe. You have the internal fortitude to stand alone because you trust your own compass more than you fear the group's disapproval.
This is why self-esteem is actually a defense against manipulation.
Exactly. If you have a strong sense of self, you need the group's constant approval less. You can say, you all might think that's line A, but I can see with my own eyes that it's line B, and I'm okay with being the only one who says it.
And a third one.
Motivation. You have to want to resist. This is crucial. Sometimes people don't want to resist. They want to be persuaded.
They want to believe the magical weight loss pill works. They want to believe the get-rich-quick investment scheme is real.
Because the fantasy is pleasant. Resisting it means accepting a more difficult reality. But if you are highly motivated to protect your health or your life savings, that motivation fuels your critical thinking. It turns on the skepticism. You start asking the hard questions.
The text mentions a really interesting concept related to this, the idea of inoculation, like a vaccine against bad ideas.
Yes, this is a brilliant metaphor first developed by the social psychologist William McGuire. Think about how a medical vaccine works. You inject a weakened or dead version of a virus into the body.
Right.
The immune system identifies it, fights it off easily, and in doing so, it creates antibodies. It learns how to recognize and defeat that specific pathogen for the future.
So when the real full-strength virus comes along, the body is already prepared, it has a defense ready.
Exactly. The same logic applies to ideas and persuasion. If you want to protect someone or yourself from a bad argument or a piece of propaganda, you don't shield them from it completely. You don't put them in a bubble. That actually makes them weaker because they have no mental antibodies.
So the echo chamber approach, where you only listen to people you agree with, is actually a terrible defense strategy.
Yeah, it's a catastrophic one. If you have never heard a coherent version of the opposing view, you have never developed the script to defeat it. So the first time you encounter a smart, charismatic person arguing for the other side, you're likely to crumble. You have no defense.
So how do you inoculate someone then?
You expose them to a weak version of the opposing argument, and then you help them dismantle it. You practice the defense in a safe environment. You say, okay, some people are going to argue X. That's a common talking point. But here's the flaw in that logic. Here is the data they are ignoring.
So when the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving dinner hits them with the full-strength conspiracy theory.
They aren't shocked or overwhelmed. They recognize it. They've seen that virus before, and they have the counter-arguments, the antibodies ready to go. They can calmly say, oh, I've heard this before, and I know why it's not the full picture.
That is a profound insight. It suggests that if we want to raise resilient kids or be resilient citizens in a democracy, we need to actively engage with opposing views, not hide from them.
Engagement builds strength. Avoidance breeds fragility.
We're coming down to the final stretch here. Let's talk about the long game. Part 6. Long-term change and real-world application. Because, it's one thing to change someone's mind for 5 minutes in a lab. It's a whole other thing to change it for life.
That's a great point. So what differentiates a temporary flip-flop from a permanent, durable shift in attitude? The text points to a few key factors for making it stick.
And what are those?
First, reinforcement. If you change your attitude and adopt a new behavior, say you were finally persuaded to start going to the gym, you need positive feedback for that change to stick.
You need to see results.
You need to feel better, see results on the scale, or have a friend compliment you. That reinforcement cements the new positive attitude toward the gym. If you go and it's miserable and you pull a muscle and no one notices, that attitude change will likely revert back to the old one.
Makes sense. What else?
Repetition. It's not glamorous, but it's essential. We need to hear the message or perform the behavior multiple times. One inspirational speech rarely changes a life forever unless it is followed by repeated action or repeated exposure to the core message.
This is why advertising is so repetitive.
They are annoying you by accident. They are methodically carving a neural pathway in your brain. They are trying to make their brand the default attitude through sheer repetition.
And the third one was social reinforcement.
Which brings us full circle back to normative influence. If you change your mind about something important, say, you quit your high-paying corporate job to become an artist, but your entire social circle mocks you for it.
You're going to second-guess yourself pretty quickly.
That change is likely to crumble under the social pressure. But if you find a new group, a new tribe of fellow artists who support and validate the new attitude, it locks it in. We need our tribe to reinforce our evolution.
The book lists so many applications for this: marketing, politics, public health law.
It shows just how ubiquitous these mechanics are. In health communication, for example, convincing people to quit smoking isn't just about giving them facts. It's not just informational influence.
Right, the message, smoking kills, is on every pack. If facts were enough, no one would smoke.
Exactly. Effective campaigns also use normative influence. They work to change the social norm so that smoking isn't seen as cool and sophisticated, but as gross or antisocial. And they use the behavior loop, getting people to commit to small steps, using nicotine patches, breaking the physical habit loop. It takes all three.
And in law, you mentioned jury dynamics.
A jury is a perfect microcosm of social influence. It's a pressure cooker of normative and informational influence. You have 12 people locked in a room in a high-stakes, ambiguous situation.
A recipe for conformity.
A perfect recipe. One confident juror who acts as a credible expert source can sway the entire room, not because their argument is the best, but because they leverage these mechanics effectively. They build a small coalition, they create normative pressure on the holdouts, they present their version of events as the most coherent information. It's pure social psychology in action.
Before we wrap this all up, we have to address the elephant in the room. This book is a classic. But classic can sometimes be a polite word for old.
Yes, and that is a legitimate limitation we need to acknowledge. The text's original research, all these classic experiments, they predate the modern internet era. They predate social media, algorithmic micro-targeting, and AI-generated propaganda.
So it doesn't talk about TikTok trends or Twitter mobs or how the YouTube algorithm can radicalize people?
No, it doesn't mention them by name. But I would argue, and I think the authors would too, that while the medium has changed dramatically, the underlying psychology hasn't. The tools are new and far more powerful, but the human brain is the same hardware we had 50 years ago.
The principles transfer.
They transfer perfectly. What is the like button on Facebook or Instagram? It's just a digital, real-time counter for normative influence. It's a measurable peer pressure gauge.
How many people in my tribe approve of this?
Exactly. What is the algorithm feeding you content that it knows you'll agree with? That's just automated confirmation bias and avoidance of cognitive dissonance on a massive scale. And what is the influencer selling you a new brand of tea? That's source credibility and parasocial trust, weaponized for commerce.
So our job, as listener, is to do the work of applying these classic foundational theories to our modern context.
Exactly. The physics of influence haven't changed, even if the speed and volume of information have accelerated beyond anything Zimbardo could have imagined. If anything, understanding these classic mechanics is more important now than ever because the number of persuasive attempts coming at us every day has exploded exponentially.
Okay, let's synthesize this entire deep dive. We've covered a massive amount of ground.
We have. We started with the very formation of our attitudes, how personal experience, social learning, and our brain's cognitive shortcuts build our entire worldview. Then we looked at the powerful pressures of conformity, that constant battle between wanting to fit in and be liked, which is normative, versus wanting to be right and accurate, which is informational.
We unpacked the three-part persuasion equation, the importance of the source, the message, and the audience. And we looked at that mind-bending loop where simply acting a certain way can trick our brains into believing it, just to avoid the discomfort of dissonance.
And finally, we armed ourselves. We looked at the shield of resistance. We now know that prior knowledge, confidence in our own judgment, and the strategy of inoculation are our best defenses against unwanted manipulation.
For me, the core value of this book, and hopefully of this discussion, is that it takes these things that feel like mysterious magic tricks. How did that politician convince so many people? Or how did I get talked into buying this? And it turns them into engineering problems. It makes them understandable.
And if they're understandable, they're manageable.
Exactly.
It bridges that gap between complex theory and lived practice. It reminds us that while we are deeply social animals, wired to connect and conform, we are also thinking animals, fully capable of critical analysis and resistance.
So here's my final provocative thought for you, the listener, to take with you. The next time you make a choice, it could be a big one or a small one, whether it's buying a new phone or forming an opinion on a news story or just deciding which movie to watch with your friends, stop for just 1 second. Freeze frame that moment.
And ask yourself the crucial question.
Ask yourself, am I doing this because I've carefully evaluated the facts and I've concluded that this is the right, the best, the most accurate choice? Is this informational? Or am I doing this because it's the safe choice? Because everyone else is doing it, and I don't want to make waves. I don't want to be the one person standing still when the whole herd is running. Is this normative?
And there's no judgment in the answer, but the awareness is everything. And remember, the final lesson from the book, resistance is learnable. Autonomy is a skill. You can't fight the invisible strings if you don't even know they're there.
But now you know.
Now you know.
Observe the mechanics at play around you this week. Watch the commercials. Watch the dynamics in your office meetings. Watch your friends. Watch yourself. It's a fascinating show once you know what you're looking for. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you next time.